All about earthquakes in Japan. Earthquake life in Japan. Japan Guides Japan 101. Japan's location in the Ring of Fire, a highly volcanic, tectonically active region of the Pacific, means that it's a country that sees a lot of earthquakes throughout the year. This can be surprising if you're from a country that isn't prone to earthquakes, and it's important to be prepared, which is why we've put together this handy guide. What causes earthquakes? Before we get into how to prepare for earthquakes, let's go over what they actually are. It's gonna get a little technical, pun intended. But it's important to know. If you can remember your older science classes, you're probably aware that the movement of tectonic plates, pieces of the Earth's crust and upper mantle, is a major cause of earthquakes. There are 7 major plates, many minor plates and also microplates. These plates are in motion, albeit quite slow motion, and the type of motion between plates are split into 3 different types of boundaries. There are convergent plate boundaries, where one or more plates collide into each other, and one eventually slides under the others. Then there's divergent plate boundaries, where plates pull away from each other and creates rifts, that are often filled by molten lava. Finally, there are transform plate boundaries, which are plates that rub against each other horizontally. Regardless of the type, the motion at these boundaries creates a lot of strain, and a lot of energy. This energy is released along faults, which are cracks in the Earth's crust, and that released energy is the cause of most earthquakes. When this energy is released below or near the ocean, which surrounds the Japanese archipelago, it can also trigger tsunami, or tidal waves. Still following? Great! So how does all of that affect Japan? Well, of those aforementioned major plates, Japan is located on top of 2 of them, and there are another 2 nearby. Most of northern Japan sits on the North American plate, while the south is mostly above the Eurasian plate. Nearby are the Pacific plate and the Philippine plate. These make up part of the Ring of Fire, a large area of the Pacific Ocean that is home to some 90% of the world's earthquakes. According to the Japan Meteorological Agency, Japan has an estimated yearly average of some 150,000 earthquakes a year. Most of those are quite weak, some so small that people don't really notice, but occasionally they aren't. Take, for example, the Great East Japan earthquake on March 11, 2011. This incredibly powerful quake was caused by a convergent boundary. The Pacific plate moved underneath the North American plate, and the North American plate was forced upward. Beyond the immediate devastation caused by the quake and the resultant tsunami, the force was so big that it accelerated the Earth's spin, shortening the day by 1.8 microseconds, according to Richard Gross at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. Furthermore, the movement of the North American plate has been responsible for many of Japan's earthquakes in the past few decades, and has been moving an astonishing 3.5 inches per year. Of course, it isn't all bad news. Japan's location in a highly volcanic region is also the reason that there are so many incredible onsen throughout the country, and why the landscape is so diverse and beautiful. Plus, Japan has made incredible strides in engineering when it comes to creating earthquake-resistant infrastructure and buildings. The government has set very strict standards for seismic resistance, and buildings are either retrofitted to conform to those standards, or built to them from the start of construction. Buildings are classified as structures with anti-seismic systems, structures with damping systems, or structures that are seismically isolated. A great example of their engineering ingenuity is the iconic Tokyo Skytree, which was constructed with a central pillar of reinforced concrete and a tuned mass damper that can absorb up to 50% of energy generated by quakes. While we're on the topic of energy generated by quakes, why don't we take a look at how earthquakes in Japan are measured? How are earthquakes measured? There are two major ways to measure earthquakes: magnitude and seismic intensity. Magnitude is the scientific measurement of the power of an earthquake at its source, where seismic intensity is measurement of how an earthquake feels, and the observable effects that accompany an earthquake. There are numerous intensity scales used around the globe, but Japan uses the JMA seismic intensity scale, also called Shindo. Shindo ranges from 0 to 7, where 0 is imperceptible to most people and only recorded by equipment, and 7 is incredibly intense and potentially destructive. As you can see from the diagram, the higher intensities are also further delineated for even greater specificity. One of the unique aspects of measuring using an intensity scale is that depending on conditions, such as whether or not you're indoors or outdoors, if you're on a hill or near the ocean, etc., the same earthquake can have different measurements, even in the same location. This might make seismic intensity seem a bit arbitrary, but in some ways it is a more meaningful measurement, since it corresponds with the effects people actually experience in the event of an earthquake. Now that we know what earthquakes are and how they're measured, let's look at how we can prepare for one, and appropriate ways to respond depending on where you are when an earthquake occurs. Building an emergency bag or earthquake kits. If you plan on staying in Japan for a substantial length of time, we highly recommend that you put together a preparedness kit in case of an earthquake, typhoon, or any other inclement weather. Here are recommended items for a preparedness kit, as suggested by Ready.gov and the Tokyo Metropolitan Government. Water. 1 gallon of water, about 4 liters, per person per day, for at least 3 days. Keep in mind that it will be used for both hydration and sanitation. Food. A 3-day supply of non-perishable food per person. Can opener. Manual, of course. Flashlight. Preferably one that is self-powered. Portable radio. Batteries, both dry cell batteries and rechargeable batteries for devices, like your phone.